Good morning. The November 2nd, 2022 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order. The board will continue to meet in this hybrid format. For those who are joining us today, please ensure that you keep your mask on, as well as if you could please silence any electronic devices at this time. For those who are joining us virtually, please ensure that you stay on mute. This board will recognize you when it's appropriate for you to speak. At that time, please announce yourself and begin to speak. At this time, I will turn it over to our amazing clerk, Ms. Celeste Amato, for any corrections, additions, or noted abstentions to today's agenda.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. President. This morning, we have no changes or corrections to note. We have received the following protests and statements. On page 51, Office of the Labor Commissioner, Memorandum of Understanding, a statement of support was received from Sheriff John Anderson, Ms. Josephine Zillman-Georgi, President FOP Lodge 22, and Labor Commissioner Deborah Moore Carter. A statement of support was also received from Mr. Joshua Fannin, President IAFF Local 964, Baltimore Fire Officers. We have the following deferrals and withdrawals to note on page 110. Department of Law Settlement Agreement and Release is being deferred at the request of the Comptroller. Deferred to 11/16. On page 151 through 152, item number 11, Bureau of Procurement, contract number B50004352, Armed Security Guards. This item is being deferred at the request of the administration to December 6, 2022. On page 160 through 161, Department of Real Estate amended and restated land disposition agreement is being withdrawn at the request of the Director of Real Estate. Page 166 through 167, item number 6, Bureau of Procurement, B50006199, remove, furnish, and install carpet and various types of floor coverings. This item is being withdrawn at the request of our Chief Procurement Officer. We have the following items that are moving to the non-routine agenda. On page number 1, item number 1, Department of Audits, Audit Report, Maryland 911 Emergency System of Baltimore City, Maryland Actual Receipts and Expenditure Report for fiscal year ended June 30, 2021. On page 1, item number 2, Department of Audits, Audit Report, Independent Auditor's Report on applying agreed-upon procedures for the Baltimore City Cable Television Franchise Agreement, January 2018 through January 2021. On page 51, Office of the Labor Commissioner, Memorandum of Understanding. On page 87 through 88, item number 46, Personnel, Sheriff's Department. On page 92, Police Department Grant Award. On page 113 through 114, Mayor's Office of Infrastructure Development Resolution, and on page 167, item number 7, Bureau of Procurement, B50006654, Online Vehicle Auctioneer's Services. And on page 109, Law Department Settlement Agreement and Release. We have the following abstentions to note. The Honorable Mayor Brandon Scott is abstaining on page 100, Health Department Agreement with the Johns Hopkins University. The Honorable President Nick Mosby has no abstentions to note this morning. The Honorable Bill Henry is abstaining on the following pages. 159, Police Department Travel Request. 170, Mayor's Office Travel Request. Page 205, 206, 207, and 208, Fire and Police Retirement System Travel Requests. Page 209 through 210, Department of Recreation and Parks Travel Request. Page 211, 212, and 213, Police Department Travel Requests. The City Solicitor, James Shea, has no abstentions to note this morning, and Director of Public Works, Jason Mitchell, also has no abstentions to note this morning. And that concludes our opening statement, sir.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for approval of our opening statement.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and probably seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The opening statement has been adopted. I'll now direct the board's attention to a memorandum from my office dated October 31st, 2022. Identify matters to be considered as routine agenda items together with any corrections, additions, abstentions, or no votes that have been noted by our amazing clerk. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve all items contained on the routine agenda.
I move we approve the routine agenda.
Second. It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The routine agenda is now adopted. The first item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 1, Department of Audits, Audits Report. The audits are for the Maryland 911 Emergency System of Baltimore City, Maryland. Actual reports and expenditures report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. The board is requested to note receipt of the audit report at this time. I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Auditor Josh Pash and his team to walk us through this audit. Mr. Pash, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, honorable board members. My name is Josh Pash. I'm the city auditor. Today I'm presenting the Maryland 911 Emergency System actual receipts and expenditures for fiscal year 2021. I would like to thank the audit team and the 911 team for their assistance and efforts on this agreed upon procedures. Next slide, please. I will be presenting the report, our agreed upon procedures, and any issues noted. I want to comment the purpose of this audit is that the state collects user fees for 911 and remits those fees to local governments. The state requires an audit to verify and confirm that the city expenditures do not exceed the state contribution to the city. It doesn't. Next slide. So the report prepared by 911, here's the revenues. The total revenues is $5 million. Next slide, please. The operating expenditures was $7.6 million, which exceeds the $5 million. Next slide. Here is a breakdown of the county fee support. Next slide, please. Notes to mention is that the city maintains a separate ledger accounting of revenues and expenses for the 911, that these revenues are reported on the cash basis and they reflect the cash received during the period, and that this is in compliance with Maryland Annotated Code, sections 1301 and 1313. Next page, please. Our agreed upon procedures, they were to verify the revenues and expenses. We noted, or this report is late. It was due January 31st, and we got an extension to February 28th. It was late because our factors and our review for revenue, telephone, and payroll were not provided accurately and required extra investigation. Next slide. The first issue noted is on revenue. When reviewing revenue, we noted that the report was understated by $183,000. That was a prepaid revenue, and it was not recorded in the general ledger. When we investigated this, it was found that it was posted in May of 2022, and we didn't get it until June of 2022. We noted that this was due to the posting, which was posted to the wrong account, and our recommendation is that the 911 management monitor the revenues and see if they are consistent with those revenues that are expected from the state, as the state informs the city of the revenues that were provided. The manager's response was that the fire department, who oversees the 911, has met with BAPS and they will implement the recommendation. Next slide, please. We also noted an issue with telephone expenses. We noted that in the report, only 2 telephone invoices were included, and that the total telephone expense was understated by $644,000. When we investigated, we noticed that the telephone expenses are received by Telecom. Telecom records those expenses in their account and then is supposed to transfer them to the fire department. They were instead transferred to the police department, which used to oversee the 911 system. Our recommendation is that the 911 management review periodic reports for expected expenditures and any variances that they would investigate, and that they should meet with Telecom to facilitate correct posting of telephone expenditures. Manager's response was that they met with Telecom and they will be looking for those expenditures to make sure they're recorded in the right place. Next slide, please. We noted issues in the payroll. The payroll was understated for the last 6 months, which correlates with the implementation of Workday, and the report did not include comp and permission leave that was taken, and also did not include the payroll expenditures for the last 6 months. We recommended that 911 Fire Department coordinate with BAPS to make sure that those payroll expenditures that are applicable and related to the 911 system are correctly posted, and the minute response was that that was done. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Arter. At this time, from the board, are there any questions or concerns?
About the topic, yes, but not for Josh, for fire department.
Okay. At this time, we're opening questions for Mr. Arter. Are there any questions for Mr. Arter? Hearing and seeing none, we appreciate you. We'll call you back up. At this time, we'll recognize Mr. Jim Fresher or Tia Reddick from Baltimore City Fire Department to speak in the response to this item. Is anyone on from the administration?
Yes, this is Jim Fisher, Baltimore City Fire Department.
The floor is yours,
Baltimore
Mr.
City
Fisher.
Fire Department agrees with the recommendations of the audit department on this audit. We appreciate their time on this audit and work. So thank them for everything, and the Board of Estimates too. Thank you very much.
Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, that's it. I mean, I don't have any disagreement with anything that they have said. It is what the department expected, except for the payroll expenditures. And we were going through the payroll information for in the new city-wide system. I'm sorry, in the new Workday system. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fisher. We also have, on behalf of the administration, the Chief Administration Officer, Mr. Chris Shorter. At this time, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, board members. Also wanted just to make note, we have been talking internally as an administration about a unified call center, so a unified 911 command. That process is certainly underway. We've included in the FY23 budget a director of OUC, or the Office of Unified Command position. We expect to do a recruitment this budget year for that position. With that, we will start the process of identifying all of the cross-functional work that happens in all of the agencies, including fire, and pulling all of those employees and the staff that do that work together. So again, appreciate the audit recommendations, and appreciate that we'll be doing significant work in the coming year to pull those teams together.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. At this time, I'll open it up for questions. I believe, Ms. Comptroller, you have a question, comment?
Thank you, Mr. President. I was hoping that someone from the fire department or emergency management could update the board on progress that has been made on the establishment of protocols with the Bureau of Accounting and Payroll Systems to facilitate the correct posting of the 911 receipts. Mr. Fisher, can you speak to that?
Yes, I can. When we first took over the administration over 911, as was stated earlier, it was a police department account. It has since changed, and I've discussed that with city accounting operations on a number of different occasions. We continue to make sure that the expenditures, because they come in the form of an EFT, are posted to the correct account that was set up for the fire department to oversee the revenue and expenditures.
So when you say that you've discussed it with them several times, does that mean that it is not yet something that automatically happens, and that somebody has to consciously make a point of telling someone to send it to the right account?
Well, there's been turnover in BAPS, and because of turnover, I'm not sure exactly what directions they have in writing. The funds don't flow through the fire department or 911 for us to actually physically make a deposit. Hopefully with the new system as it is, we will be able to intervene. I'm looking forward to seeing specifically, but these funds come on a regular basis. We get a report, and so we go in and we match what is on the report to what actually has been posted in the city's accounting system.
Okay, so now that you've conferred on monitoring the revenue to make sure it's credited to the current account, are you are both agencies going to continue to monitor that revenue? Or it doesn't sound like you're at the point where BAPS can handle it entirely on its own.
Well, again, it does come into BAPS. If they have any questions about what the amount is and where to deposit it, they normally contact the agencies. In this case, it does come in on an intermittent basis. I believe it's monthly, if not quarterly. And when it does come in, whoever is handling the postings for that in BAPS is the person that would reach out to the agencies to make sure they are posting it in the correct account.
Okay. And then the last question, you kind of referred to this already. Do you have any updates for the board on management coordination with BAPS on the procedures to correctly classify these 911 payroll expenditures in Workday?
Well, that's something that, according to BAPS, they took care of internally. We don't direct specifically where the payroll expenditures are posted. Apparently, when they first moved over to Workday, they were having a problem with making sure that the expenditures were posted correctly. So these are some of the expenditures I believe that we're talking about are like fringe benefits, things like that, payments for those.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. President. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. At this time, are there any additional questions or concerns from members of this board? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, actually, we don't need to have a motion on this, so we'll just note this report and move on to the next. Mr. Pash, if you could come back in front of us. The next item can be found on page 1, number 2, Independent Auditor's Report applying upon agreed upon procedures for Baltimore City Cable Television franchise agreement from January 2018 until January 2021. The board is again requested to note receipt of this audit. At this time, we have Mr. Auditor in front of us. Mr. Josh Pash, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, honorable board members. My name is Josh Pash, the City Auditor, and I am here to report on the agreed upon procedures for the cable television franchise agreement. I would like to thank the city personnel and our audit team for their work on this project. Next slide. So I will go through the audit objectives and scope, the agreed upon procedures, and the recommendations. Next slide. So our audit objective was to verify that Comcast completely and accurately paid the franchise fees and the public education and government fees owed to the city. Those calculations were correct. The scope was January 2018 to January of 2021. We noted the agreement goes from January of 2017 to January of 2021. And we also noted that there was a previous audit completed by a CPA firm in 2017. I want to comment that the agreed upon procedures, how that works for this case is what we did is we went through the requirements in the franchise agreement and then we verified and validated each one. So I will go through each of those steps. So the first step was to verify that the Comcast subscriber charges, which is a factor in computing the PEG fees and the franchise fees, were accurate and in compliance with the 2017 agreement. We noted no exceptions. The second step was determine the completeness and accuracy of the number of subscribers, and we noted no exceptions. Okay, here comes the interesting stuff. We recalculated the franchise fees, and we noted that the franchise fees were understated by $16,453. That breakdown is for calendar year 2018, $28.96, 2019, $11,498, and for 2020, $2,059. We also verified the calculation and the payment of the PEG fees, and we noted understatement of $3,291. That's a breakdown for 2018, $579, for 2019, $2,300, and for 2020, $412. We also reviewed the operational costs related to the PEG channels, which is support that Comcast pays for PEG operational costs. We noted no exception. We verified that the payments are made on a quarterly basis. and there was no exception noted. We reviewed that the interest on late payments, and we found an exception was noted. We calculated interest of $2,140. There is a clause to reimburse the city for the cost of the audit. There was no exception noted. The findings did not meet the threshold to get reimbursed for the audit fees. Next slide. In summary, we noted that the PEG fees were understated by $19,000. The interest on late fee interest on payments was $2140, which is a total of $21,884. And we noted that that was requested for Comcast to forward to Department of Finance. Next slide, please. Also, in summary, the total PEG fees calculated due to the city were $4 million, and the net franchise fees due to the city or paid to the city was $19 million. And that completes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Harder. At this time, are there questions or concerns? At this time, the board would like to recognize Mr. Comptroller. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Morning.
I just wanted to know if there were any details you could share on how the underpayments occurred.
Right, so we reviewed the calculations of the amounts paid or the amount of the subscriber charges compared to the number of subscribers, and in the calculation, there was an error in the calculation which led to those numbers. And then for the interest fees, for the amounts that were not paid, those were the interest fees calculated on those.
Okay, so the error that was made, is that something that was in an automatic system that Comcast has running this, or was this just like a human error, like a typo kind of thing?
So we did not verify it was a human error. Basically, the reports we got were mostly automatically generated by the system. When it comes to the actual calculation of those due, we didn't verify if those were done by people or the system.
Okay. And then the last question I had is there anything that is within the city's control that can be done to ensure that future payments under this agreement are accurate?
They can do periodic checks on the calculation. And that is a very detailed and complicated process. So we didn't make any recommendations to the city to do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Are there any other questions or concerns for hearing and seeing none? Thank you so much. At this time, we'll hear from the Sheriff's Department. Is anyone here to speak on behalf of the Sheriff's Department? I'm sorry. I think I jumped ahead. I'm sorry for the, on behalf of Baltimore City Cable Television Franchise, anyone from the administration? Would Comcast like to speak? Any additional questions or concerns? Hearing none, this report will be noted. I jumped slightly ahead. Next up.
Oh.
Yeah. Sabrina was like, I don't have anything to do with the cable bill. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 51, Office of the Labor Commissioner. The board is requested to note the memorandum of understanding with the Baltimore City Sheriff's Department, FOP Lodge number 22 for fiscal year 2023 through 2025. If we have representative from the Office of Labor Commissioner, I'll invite you up to speak at this time. And we do. Hello, Ms. Moore Carter. The floor is yours.
Good morning, honorable members of the board. Deborah Moore Carter from the Office of the Labor Commissioner, and today is a very exciting day because the board gets to note the memorandum of understanding for the Baltimore Sheriff's, FOP Sheriff's Lodge number 22. And the reason why I say it's exciting because it's their very first MOU. They received the right to collectively bargain in the fall of last year, and after that, the Office of the Labor Commissioner certified them as a bargaining unit. We started our process in December by meeting with management and working on items that would be on the MOU since this was the very first one. And we started negotiating in earnest in February of this year. And we met consistently and talked about wages, benefits, and other terms and conditions of employment. The one thing that I will note about this is that the wages for the sheriffs are determined by the state, and also the law said that we could not negotiate wages. So the governor set the wages, and what we have now is the results of our collective bargaining, which was ratified by the membership in October, and now we're here for notation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. At this time, are there any questions, concerns from members of the board? Ms. Comptroller?
I'm sorry. I'd also like to mention that I'm here with Council Deborah Thompson
Okay.
from Nelson Mullins.
All right. At this time, before we go to questions or concerns, is there anything you would like to add?
No, sir, I think the Madam Commissioner has done an amazing job in outlining what we've done so far.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for the opportunity to-
No, thank you. At this time, I'll yield the floor over to members for any questions or comments. Ms. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning.
The Labor Commissioner and I have had extensive discussions about this, so I'm feeling pretty well briefed. I just want to confirm a couple things to make sure. This agreement is for how long?
It's for 3 years.
For 3 years.
Sir.
But it was the negotiation started in earnest this year.
Yes, in February.
Now, we have a practice that's defined in the charter where when we're doing negotiations with a bargaining group during the year of city elections for city employees, contracts only get negotiated for 1 year. Is that correct?
Well, actually, the language in the charter says that they can be multi-year agreements. However, it can't extend beyond the fiscal year of the mayor, and that's in the city charter.
Okay.
Because city employees come under the Municipal Labor Relations Ordinance.
Right.
Also, the charter specifies which bargaining units
Right.
are involved, which includes the City Unit of Baltimore, AFSCME Local 44, 558-2202, firefighters, fire officers, and FOP Units 1 and 2.
Okay, but the sheriff's office, this is the first time we've had negotiations with a bargaining unit for a group of employees who are administered or supervised by a separately elected official who is not elected on the same city cycle as the mayor. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I understand that this worked the way it did because this is the first time we've ever done this, but would it be worthwhile talking to somebody in the General Assembly about having a similar practice in the future when we're doing negotiations with bargaining units that report to state elected officials such as the sheriff, the state's attorney, the register of wills, the clerk of the court? If those agencies are, if their employees are conducting negotiations, should we have a similar practice? Should we talk to someone about making sure there's a similar practice for them for the same reasons that we have that provision at the city level?
Well, the reason for the provision, I'd like to give you a little background information since I know it. The charter amendment goes back to 2008. The reason for the charter amendment talking about fiscal years is for wages. And it started with the firefighters and fire officers. They wanted to ensure that wages would be given because in the past, wages were not given and they were given days instead. So the difference is that the sheriffs come under the state and the other people that you talked about don't have collective bargaining. So the sheriffs come under the state, it's a different law, and their wages are already set by the state of Maryland.
Right. Well, I get that. That's why I'm saying this is a conversation that maybe we should be having with the state. I know the other offices don't have collective bargaining, but until this year, Sheriff's Office didn't have collective bargaining, and this is a new thing, and I'm just wondering if we should be proactively preparing for the possibility of more of this in the future.
Well, since they don't negotiate their wages, and as I said, the charter amendment was specifically for wages at this time, unless they get that change, then that's something that could be looked at in the future.
Okay, all right. The only other question I had is in city code, and maybe you've already spoken to this, there's a timetable for negotiating MOUs and presenting them to the BOE. It's Article 12, Section 5-8. Is that not applicable because this is being done under the state?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding the question.
I don't know. I'm going to let you speak up, Jim, but I think we keep conflating what the state action was to allow them the ability to have negotiating power and the idea of what state control is and what city control is. I believe a lot of the things that you're talking to, Mr. Comptroller, is specific and germane to city action, particularly as it relates to our charter. So I am under the impression that currently our charter doesn't specify anything associated with FOP Lodge 22. If that's the direction of the discussion, then that is fine. But I think a lot of things that you're talking about have nothing to do with state law and have more to do with city action associated with the way that we will handle our charter.
Well, technically, I was switching topics. I had been talking about something else, and I understand that is really more covered by state law. There is a city law that says any recommendations contained in the memorandum of understanding reached between the employer and employee organization as the result of negotiations shall be brought to the Board of Estimates for its approval by April 1 in order that the Board of Estimates shall have adequate time to consider the recommendations contained therein in connection with the proposed ordinance of estimates for the ensuing fiscal year. So
We talked about that, and the notice to the board is when the budget comes before the Board of Estimates, because the wages are contained in the proposed budget.
So we already had that notice back in the spring that the money that was budgeted for the sheriff's office for the coming year, that total existing budget already includes the funds that would come out of the negotiations that were just concluded.
Correct, and also I'd like to remind you that the governor determined this time around what the wages would be for FOP Lodge number 22.
Okay, I just wanted to check that. Thank you very much.
Just for the record, that will continue. The state sets,
Unless it's changed.
unless state laws change.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Solicitor?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to note is that all that you talked about in your first question, Mr. Controller, would probably require a change in the state law.
Yeah.
So you got to do more than just talk to the General Assembly. You got to convince them to change it.
Oh, well, all change starts with talking, sir. I get that.
Most of it does.
Any additional questions, concerns for Madam Commissioner?
Nope.
I'd also like to let you know that there are representatives from FOP Lodge number 22 here.
Yeah, so if the representatives from FOP Lodge 22 could stand and be recognized,
And FOP Lodge number 3.
and FOP Lodge number 3. Thank you for your work in negotiating. I would like to note for the record, while they're standing, that the board has received written statement on behalf of our Sheriff, John Anderson, I believe. Ms. Tab Harper is here to represent the Sheriff Department. Ms. Josephine Zillman, Georgia, the president of FOP Lodge 22. That's you, Madam President. Thank you for coming today, as well as from our amazing commissioner who's presented to us today. Additionally, we received statements of support from Mr. Joshua Joshua Fannin, President of IAFF Local 964, the Baltimore Fire Officers, as well as other unions representing various groups of city employees. So this is a win-win effort, a team effort. It shows when folks can come together and negotiate, and we can move on, and all of us continue to serve the citizens of Baltimore. So thank you so much for all that. At this time, this MOU will be noted, and you guys are welcome to stay with us. If not, thank you so much for coming out and joining us. Thank you. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on pages 87 and 88, number 46, Sheriff Department. This is regarding the approval of an employment contract with Aaron Smythe. At this time, we have a representative from the Sheriff Department here to speak on behalf of this op. Is Ms. Assistant Sheriff, are you going to speak on behalf of this item? At this time, if you could walk us through.
Yes, sir.
You thought I was going to let you go that fast?
In reference to the contract,
Yeah, for Miss Aaron Smythe.
yes. We extended Ms. Smith's contract an additional 320 hours. She's assisting us with procurement, Workday, and with body-worn cameras, with the body-worn camera program.
Thank you. That concludes your presentation?
Yes, did you need some additional information?
Not me, but maybe the board at this time.
Specifically,
I'll
what
open it up
she's working on.
to the board.
Yeah, I did have a question.
Mr. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so if I understood this correctly, the contract expired on September 1,
Yes, sir.
2022. Instead of extending the contract retroactively to a specific date, you're just increasing the number of hours and letting those hours be applied retroactively back to September 1.
Yes.
So she's going to be doing more work, but we're going to count those hours as having been worked prior to September 1?
Well, actually, we don't know specifically how long we're going to need her to work. So she's been working the entire time through the contract.
So the contract are we getting rid of the expiration date of September 1?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
I'm just trying to figure out, like, what is the point in time?
Let me, I actually have my HR person.
Oh,
Oh, she might have left. But what I think happened was, once the time expired, I think she continued to work
so
for us.
We're actually paying her. This is to pay her for hours she already worked.
Yes, sir.
Prior to September 1.
I'm pretty sure that she was working for us with the understanding that we would continue her contract.
Is there anybody else? Is there anybody here from our HR, from Central HR? Because I have a question about how that would work from a contract
I think she's
management.
going to run back in for me.
Okay.
I think she's going to run in. But I know she never stopped working. I do know that. She worked continuously for us.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know whether to ask this as a question for the sheriff's office or as a question for HR, but I'm kind of concerned about whether we should be expecting more of these kind of retroactive increases for the total number of allowable hours for a contractual employee, or is there some particular reason why this is a unique case? And I don't know.
Are you?
I mean, well, that's my question. I don't know if that question isn't for you, or if that question should be for your HR person or central HR. I don't know.
I think the mayor would like to speak.
Certainly.
So, Mr. Comptroller, Mr. President, what I suggest is that for this item is that I'll make a motion that we defer it until we're able to get someone here. It's a small thing. We can just clarify everything moving forward.
Okay.
One thing, sir, that I can tell you, as far as body-worn cameras, that is one of the huge projects that she's working with me on. The sheriff's office, we have not started on that project at all. We just met with Axon.
So she's still going to be working going forward on that.
Absolutely. She's going to be working with me to get our deputies armed with body-worn cameras. She did the program for the police department. Right now, I don't have a contractual person at all who can work with me on that. So that's something she met with the members of Axon, and we've started on that. So yes, she is working with me.
Okay. So I guess.
Here she is.
Oh,
Do you guys, you want to hear from her? You have something else to say, Mr. Mayor?
Good morning. They had a question about Aaron's contract from September 1st. I know she never stopped working.
No, she
Yeah. And he'll ask, just so it's on the mic.
okay. Good morning, sir.
good morning. So I guess, first of all, if the contract is being extended retroactively, no, I'm sorry, you're not extending the contract. You are just extending the total number of hours?
Yes.
So when does the contract expire?
At the conclusion of the 320 hours.
Oh, okay, so there is no expiration date?
No, we don't have an expiration.
You're just now saying there's a total of 320
Yes,
hours?
sir. Yes, sir. Or,
Okay,
and I think it's 48,000, something like that on it. Or whichever comes first. I guess.
but this could theoretically then continue for an indefinite amount of time?
Not the way she's working. I don't think so. She's doing a tremendous job, and she's been real instrumental with the Workday finance system. You know, that's been real challenging with a lot of agencies, as well as the sheriff's office, and she has been helping with that a lot.
Is this a common procedure to do a contract for a total number of hours?
This is my first time, so it's not common.
Okay.
Yeah.
But contractual,
It's not for me anyway, I'm sorry.
but contractual employment from an hourly perspective is something that the city has utilized for a long time, not just in the sheriff's department.
We do have a legislative mandate with those.
Yeah, if I can say, I think the clarifying point, I thought you were saying that there was an expiration date of an existing contract. I think what's been clarified today, that right now with you, is that there is no expiration date, and she's a contract employee.
Right, but what I'm questioning is whether or not that's proper contract management to have no expiration date, because that, if I'm understanding this properly, it puts the sheriff's department in the position of, if she, say for example, the contractor is injured or somehow is not able to do the work right now.
Can I say the reason why?
Okay.
So we have a legislative mandate on these body-worn cameras. That's one of the reasons why we brought her in. And she has specialized expertise in that she performed this for the police department. So she's just not somebody that we picked out of the blue. We have to have these body-worn cameras done by 2025. We have done nothing at all, and she knows exactly the people to talk to. So there are some specifics here, and we do have a date nailed down that we'd like to have it done by, which is July of next year. We'd like to have the policy in place. We'd like to have all our deputies armed with these cameras. So, we actually do have a date. We're hoping to have it done by then.
Then I guess that's exactly why I don't understand why this contract doesn't simply extend the contract to June 30th of 2023 and add additional value to it. That's a more common way of dealing with a contract extension?
Because realistically, it might not be done by then. We haven't purchased any cameras yet. I don't have the personnel. I don't have the tech people in place. So I don't know if it's going to be done by then.
I also think it's important to note for the record from what I've learned today that this is not a contract. She's a contractor that works on an hourly portion. So what I'm hearing is that they want to extend it based off of the work that they know is left for a certain amount. I believe at a rate of, did you say $48?
48,000, I think.
48,000.
A total of 48,600, I believe.
So $48,000 total is what that they're putting in the bank. They're earmarking to be able to pay her to do this contracted work based off of her subject matter expertise. But I want to be really clear that this is not a contract. So what I'm hearing is they don't necessarily have a contract to extend a date because there was never a contract put in place. This was a contracted employee that was working inside of an agency.
I'm not sure how to respond to this isn't a contract because this is not a contract?
Yeah, so city agencies have the ability to bring on contractors to work. I mean, you can look around. I'm trying to talk to you. To work on hourly basis. So whether they work 10 hours a week, whether they work 20 hours a week, whether they work 40 hours a week, they're contractors working on an hourly rate, not working towards a contract, not working towards specifically completing this work in this particular time with these particular parameters. That is what we're missing here. So when earlier you were talking about that the contract was expiring, there is no expiration date because she's just a contractor working inside of a city agency that they're coming back in front of the board asking for additional dollars to spend on behalf of the work that she's performing. So the council services, through DPW, through other agencies, they do have contractors that are working on hourly rates that are not specifically tied to a contract with an expiration date. That doesn't make sense.
If this isn't a contract, what is before the board?
For us to approve a contractor. So if a city council member hires a contractor that was working for 10 hours a week on the price of $20 an hour, it's not going to say that employee A is not going to work as of this date any longer. There's just going to be a contractor inside of that city council's office.
Did you have a contract with Aaron?
We sent the actual contract, this is before the board, we sent it to the city law offices. They reviewed it and they approved it. You know, he said it was a good contract. We did the 320 hours. He didn't ask about the ending date. We asked for 320 hours additional for her to stay for $48,000 and some change, I believe. And they approved it. They put their stamp of approval as far as their contract. They said it was a good contract. So, you know, and then we sent it to you all.
I think the city solicitor would like to say.
Do you want to say something?
He doesn't.
He probably doesn't want to.
No, I'd love to.
Mr. Solicitor, the floor is yours.
I don't think these contracts are all that unusual. For example, Mr. Controller, when we hire outside counsel for a lawsuit, we don't have an end date. We have a task that needs to be accomplished, and we pay a certain rate per hour, which has to be submitted by invoice, but that's not an unusual type contract for a situation like this. It's still a contract, though. There's a difference between a written contract and contractual obligations, but this is a contract. Perhaps not written in its entirety, I'm not sure, but these are contractual obligations.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the information that my fellow board members have shared, and I appreciate what you're saying. It still feels a little strange to take a contract that was time-based and turn it into a contract that is hours-based. Like
I'm
it
not
did.
hearing that it
The
was
other-
time-based. I think that she has other responsibilities outside of body-worn cameras, what I heard from the presentation today.
Yes.
If you guys could speak on behalf of that, I don't want to speak for the
Absolutely.
sheriff's
She's, like I
department.
said, she's working with our procurement section. She's been very instrumental in getting a lot of vendors paid that were lingering in the wind. You know, we were getting notices, threatening notices to sue because they weren't getting paid. No fault of ours, because we submitted the
We're
paper.
familiar with that issue.
Yeah, exactly. So she has been, I think we had like 30 outstanding. I think now it's only like 9, you know, so if it's that many now. So she's working, you know, very well with that. And I said the Workday system, and she's familiar with it too, because as you may know, she used to work, you know, with procurement and finance before. So she knows a lot, and a lot of the players that she can contact to get stuff moving, you know. And with the Workday finances, so that was very challenging. It's still challenging. So she's doing a very good job with that. A very good job. We lost the service, our LexisNexis service, which is where we use for our warrant apprehensions and stuff, and she got them paid so we can get our service back. So she has done a wonderful job, and we would like to continue her, you know, with the job, not let alone the body-worn cameras and stuff, which is, like she said, state law mandated that we have to get done.
I guess I'm just still confused by why, if she's so integral to this and it's so important that she continue to do this work,
And-
that you waited until a month and a half after her contract expired to put in this change to that expired
Yeah, well,
contract.
we should have done it a little earlier. We know there's a lot going on in the election, a whole lot of stuff that was going on in the sheriff's office. So we should have. And like I said, this is my first time doing this. This is, I've only been in this position like a year and a half. So it's my first time. You're right, we should have sent it in earlier, but it's nothing we can do about that now. We're sending better performance now. I'm sorry.
She kept working.
Yeah, she kept working.
There's nothing we
She
can
never
do about
stopped
it now
working.
because we
She
should've
never
done it
stopped
sooner.
working. I'm sorry.
It was going back to a previous conversation.
Oh, okay.
that the council president and I had on a different topic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But the lady never stopped working.
Mr. Mayor.
I make a motion that we approve the item.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it. Please note that there's a 4-to-1 vote. There's a no vote by the comptroller, and all other 4 members on board voted to approve. Thank you so much for your
Thank
time
you.
today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So much. As we move on to the next non-routine agenda, can be found on page 92, Baltimore Police Department. This request is to approve a grant award for the Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention for BPD's Baltimore Community Intelligence Centers. On behalf of the Baltimore Police Department, we have Director Graham Campbell to walk us through this item. Director Graham, he's meeting with us virtually. The floor is yours.
Yes, good morning, esteemed board members. Thanks for having me. I'm also joined today by Stephen Durkosh, who helps us oversee grants for BPD as well. So I'll walk through the BCIC. What we're looking for here is for continued funding for 2 analysts in the Eastern and Western BCICs. As you know, the BCICs are the Baltimore Community Intelligence Centers. We have 4 of them currently in the city, in the Eastern and the Western, the 2 original ones, the Central and the Southwestern as well. They exist to do analysis, sort of intel centers for the districts. They have a suite of monitors that can view CityWatch cameras and additional personnel who can accomplish other duties. So overall, I think just to give a brief overview of the BCICs, and then if Mr. Durkosh has anything on the fiscal side, he can certainly take it away, is that this year for us, 2022, has been a year of building internal audit tools and sort of reporting requirements at my unit, right, the Data Driven Strategies Division. I have some incredibly talented folks who have worked on a lot of tools so that we can see and measure the activities and the proactivities of these centers, so we can see what's being done. And because this is grant funded, one of my sergeants, Sergeant Zach Novak, he produces a quarterly report for this as well. And so just I'll give you some numbers from the last quarter real quick. And so these are activities only for the 4 BCICs, right? So this is not total of all our activities. But when we look at City Watch operations for our officers inside these district centers using the cameras, not the City Watch folks, just our folks using cameras, there were a total of 470 unique operations in that quarterly period, with a total of 141 arrests and 65 guns recovered, right? So that's this is work that can only exist in these 4 places currently because of their access to the cameras. Again, doesn't mean that there's not guns being recovered every day by City Watch. This is a separate sort of function. They also monitor the license plate readers. Because they're centrally located, right, there's a hub where people sit. They're much more able to notice when alarms go off for stolen autos and respond to those alarms and dispatch officers in the districts that do not have BCICs. It's incumbent on the officers in the car to catch the stolen alarm when it comes in, and they could be out of the car on a call, and it just is sort of, there's gaps there, right? So this is a way that we have where they can do this, and we're looking at expanding them to cover the other districts as well. So for LPRs, sort of alarms that the BCICs, and this is just the quarter, Q3, was 221 hits were recorded with 24 arrests made and 66 vehicles recovered. So that's, again, another sort of feather in the cap, I think, for them. And there's a bunch more sort of discrete tasks they do. And so, we're looking to sort of see if we can continue the funding for the analysts in the Eastern and the Western. I should mention that there are analysts in all of our districts. These are specifically grant-funded analysts when we stood up the BCICs at the beginning for those 2 analysts. So I'll pause now for questions or see if Steve Durkosh has anything he wants to add.
Thank you so much, Mr. Campbell. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Ms. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning.
My understanding is that the BCIC centers are, BCIC, are based on Chicago's Strategic Decision Support Centers. Given that, should we be seeing similar decreases to Chicago's in violent crimes like homicides, assaults, et cetera? And if not, what are the conditions that are different here in Baltimore from Chicago that might explain the difference in the decrease?
Sure. Great question. Thanks for asking. So the Chicago centers, the SDSCs, they're in more districts. I mean, clearly Chicago has many more districts than we do. But the other thing is they're 24-hour operation, right? So they work 24 hours. They're staffed with a civilian analyst. Usually, last I checked, was through the University of Chicago Crime Lab and in partnership. The rooms are much smaller. There's probably only room for 2 or 3 people. And they also have technology that we're trying to bring on board also, whereby they have a video management system so that when an alert goes off, they can click a button and it brings up the 4 closest cameras, and they're sort of on the cameras doing X, Y, and Z. We're not there yet. Our cameras are more sort of, people go and look at cameras in places they want to search. So I think the technology there is a little more enhanced than currently what we have. But overall, I think, obviously having staffing around the clock would be helpful, and that's one of the areas where they're a little different than us.
So, I'm sorry, let me practice my reflective listening there. They do their centers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We staff ours how much?
I want to say it sort of depends a little bit on the district, but for the most part, it's probably around 16 to 17 hours a day, right? There's generally a day shift and a day shift and an evening shift.
We do 2 shifts, they do 3.
Correct.
Okay, all right. And they have these in all of their districts, and we have no? Or
No,
they just
correct.
have them in more districts than we have?
They have, you're right. They have many more districts than us, so they have more of them. So, yeah.
They have more of them, okay.
Yes. I don't know what the percentage is. I'd have to sort of see what, yeah.
Okay, and then the third factor was their camera network is more extensive than ours?
Yeah, their camera network is more extensive, but the ability for them to bring their camera system is tied to their it uses a system that Genetec provides, but it's tied to their CAD system. So when, for example, a ShotSpotter alert comes out, let's just say, the system automatically pulls up the 4 closest cameras to that alert, right? And then the officers can then manually move those 4 cameras to see what they want to see. Whereas for us, the shot spotter alert would go off, the officers would then go to the cameras and then pull them up, manually, which isn't, it doesn't take forever, but there is a difference in terms of the way the system is baked.
And the last question I'm going to ask on this is there a threshold percentage reduction in violent crime that you would set to deem whether the centers were effective or not?
So we generally try and set percentages for outputs as opposed to outcomes. So, for example, we want the stolen alarm, the license plate reader sort of response rate to be over 50% for the BCICs, right? And they're currently around 49. So we sort of look at it from the
You're
beginning
measuring
lens, right?
those metrics, not how it affects the violent crime rate.
Correct. Yeah, it's easier for us to certainly track that, but also to say, we believe that recovering more stolen cars, making more arrests will reduce this problem, as opposed to sort of trying to take credit for or to tie it back to a total crime decline.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Director, and just Graham for a couple clarifying points. I think one, Mr. Comptroller, as you know, we are now moving into a world where we're talking about the completeness of building public safety in Baltimore, but I think it's also important for us to note, like in those comparisons, that even, as you know, Chicago is seeing some increases in a lot of categories this year, but when you look at the outputs from the districts that have the BCITs for the amount of guns that they're recovering, and you heard about the stolen autos, that kind of productivity we know ties directly into reducing violent crime, and that's why we're continuing to push this and expand and want to expand that, because it's about having all the systems work together, because we know the BCITs also has a very integrated relationship with our state's attorney's office as well.
Any additional questions or concerns? Hearing and seeing none at this time.
I move approval.
Second. It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on pages 113 to 114. The Mayor's Office of Infrastructure Development. The board is requested to approve the resolution relating to membership of the Design Build Executive Committee. On behalf of the Mayor's Office of Infrastructure Development, we have Director Matthew Garbach to present. Mr. Garbach, the floor is yours.
Settlement for the kid in BC. Yes.
I guess so, yeah. Did we defer it? Did we defer it?
One got deferred.
I know one, but the other one.
You're right.
All right, we'll call it in.
You're right.
Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Controller, honorable members of the Board of Estimates. I do have a presentation. It's up. I will be pretty brief here, only have 5 slides. Just want to give a quick background to this. The action itself is relatively straightforward, but I want to present this in a broader context. The request today is to amend the composition of an executive committee that was established by a resolution approved by this body in 2011. The bigger issue here is on the use of design build as a project delivery method. So design build is a delivery method where you basically contract out for the design of a project and the construction of a project in one vehicle and one mechanism. This is can be a very powerful tool. State of Maryland uses it regularly. A lot of other organizations use it quite regularly. The city of Baltimore enacted in 2011 an resolution that would allow for this to happen. It has not been used that much, if at all. It's been used very rarely. Predominantly because the traditional way of designing, contracting for a design, then contracting for a construction, has resulted in very favorable projects. However, we have a whole bunch of federal money and state money coming in for infrastructure investments. We really need to have a quick and accommodating way to move these through to meet some of these deadlines, because these projects need to move relatively quickly. So under the resolution that was created in 2011, there are a number of procedures that have to go through for a design-build contract to move forward. So the first procedure is that a construction agency has to submit a proposal to the Design-Build Executive Committee. As it's written, the Executive Committee comprises the directors of DOT, DGS, DPW, the chief of MBU, and the city solicitor. The committee then considers that proposal. It lists a number of very specific questions that have to be answered, and it has to specify the approach that is to be used when designing for a project. So next slide. There are 3 approaches that it talks about. The first is called a one-step low bid. So basically, you have a design build in one contract package. Whoever has the lowest bid wins the project. Fairly straightforward. The second approach is a 2-step low bid, where an issue for a request for qualifications is issued to firms. That comes back, and from that list, based on qualifications, a reduced candidate list is generated. A RFP is then sent to just those people on the reduced candidate list, and from that, you get a proposal. The technical proposal and a pricing proposal, similar to how we do with RFPs. Technical proposal is graded on a pass or fail. So are they technically capable of doing the work or not? So it's just pass, fail, and then for those who pass, it's awarded to the lowest bidder. So that's a 2-step process to get it down to sort of a core group. The third is actually a process called best value. This was written in 2011. That was a relatively new concept at the time, but using the existing provisions of our charter and other things, this actually gets us fairly close to what is traditionally considered a best value. So the same process as I just described, where you issue a request for qualifications, where you generate from the RQL a reduced candidate list, you send an RFP to that reduced candidate list, and from there, you score both the technical and the pricing. So it's not just a pass-fail, you score it. So 70% is a cutoff there, so you have to get at least 70% to be considered. Then those who are within 10% of the points of the top scorers are then brought to the table, and the city could say, you know what? We think we have what we need, the highest score wins. The city could also say, you know what? We have 4 proposals. We're now going to do a best and final offer. So all of you guys are now, you vendors are allowed to go back, put your best offer together, and then come back to the city. It will then be scored by that same rubric, and at that point, the highest score wins. So the idea is that it's not necessarily the lowest score, or the lowest price, that drives it. It's something that could be really valuable to our infrastructure projects as we move forward. So that's the bigger picture of just design build. What this particular action does is it makes a number of sort of ministerial changes. First of all, it would add the Mayor's Office of Infrastructure Development to the Executive Committee to make sure that there's consistency, there's prioritization, there's a way to make sure that different things are being spent appropriately. Secondly, it would say that the MOID chief is the chair. The mayor directs who the chair is. This would just say that this would be the chair of the committee. The third item is to add Rec and Parks. This is an important one because Rec and Parks used to go through other agencies for their capital construction. They are now doing their own construction, so it'll be important for them to have a seat at the table. The next item is to say that only, and we did, Mr. Comptroller did suggest this, and it was something that we thought was quite good, is that the indirect agencies, so the MOID chief, the MBU chief, the solicitor, would sit on all considerations, but the agency overseeing the project would be the only one of those agencies that would sit on it. So in other words, if there's a DGS project, only DGS would be the agency rep. It wouldn't make sense to occupy DPW's time or DOT's time, whereas solicitor, MOID, MBU, they would all be part of it. It would just help streamline that conversation. And then just other ministerial actions consistent with all our other boards, including this body, specifying that there can be a designee who can act on behalf of the members so that things don't sort of jam up if we need people. And then also just adding a date at the end when the latest version was made, so that we keep track of version control. So those are the basic changes here. We think that this is going to help get this committee up and running. We are excited. We have some ideas that are in the pipeline already with the Departments of Rec and Parks and DGS. And as soon as this is approved and ready, we will, with the board's, deference, of course, we will be willing to move forward with this. And I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Mr. Mayor, you have a question or concern?
Not a question, no concern. Thank you, Director. For me, Mr. President and Mr. Comptroller, we all know, Mr. President, you and I toured the Middle Branch Center last week, and we'll be opening it next week, and it's an amazing place. And we know through ARPA and other things and money that we're now going to have coming in, we're looking to build and have more of those facilities and others renovated. And we know that this is a way for us to get this done quicker and get it done more efficiently, working with all the agencies. So we're looking forward to seeing it happen.
Thank you. Mr. Garbach, with the design build capabilities that the city currently has, how often do we use them?
It has been used very rarely. There's actually only been one, to my knowledge, contract that was considered a design build. It was one that was sort of thought of as a design build after the fact, is my understanding. The problem with design build is it works great for certain projects and not for others. You have to put a lot of forethought into how you're going to grade it, what the milestones are. If the city then tries to go in and start dictating pieces of it, that gets into means and methods that are the contractor's purview, and that has unfortunately opened up some issues with the city in engaging with the contractor with that. Other than that, things that are similar to design build, like the Headworks, the CMAR contract, that's construction management at risk, the design was done up to about 30 or 40%. Then it was given to a contractor to finish it and construct it, so not fully design build. That was brought through this committee as well.
Why do you think agencies in the city have steered away from doing design builds?
Well, I think for the most part, we have gotten relatively good projects from the traditional way of doing things. I think that we have been able to get great, public works projects or DOT projects, and for most of the time, it's straightforward. I think with all this money coming in, I think that it is something that needs to be considered to expedite some of this a little quicker. And I think, quite frankly, there is not a knowledge of design build in the city because it hasn't been done, whereas in the state, it's done all the time.
Yeah.
So I think there is somewhat of an apprehension to sort of cross that bridge, seeing that there was somewhat of an issue with a contract in the past. So.
Now, the fundamental purpose of, I guess, what we're talking about this resolution today is just to increase the configuration of the board is one of the main things. But still the lack of knowledge or comfortability of going down the design build model will still persist. I don't really see like the concern that we have today. I mean, one easy thing that when I originally came on the board, when talking to DGS, particularly small roof type of jobs, which is pretty straightforward. And, I thought it was kind of ridiculous that we would pay one firm to design it and then try to take more time and go out for RFP to pay other firms, the same one that just designed it, to even bid on the same job, right? So I that ability to do that has always been there. I don't know that this this really changes the comfortability. It just kind of constructs the board in a different fashion. I don't. What's the real delta between the way it currently is outside of the configuration?
Certainly.
And what will happen in the future?
There's, I think, there was a discomfort at one point, and B, there's a lot of new people who work in the city, and quite frankly, this is a resolution that's 11 years old. When I've talked to people about this, they had no idea that we could even do this. So I think there is just visibility on this and the desire to move it forward. Also, we're looking at, specifically with Rec and Parks, some, I don't want to call them simple, but relatively straightforward concept, like perhaps swimming pools. Fairly simple, potentially, type of model. They're fairly similarly constructed. Trying to do something simple to build sort of our knowledge base, and we are reaching out to agency on-call consultants who have this particular knowledge to provide this level of expertise. So we have those meetings set up.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. President, I was just going to chime in that you and I and the comptroller know that folks get comfortable in doing things a certain way until they're told that they have to think about doing it a different way. And now everyone's been told that we have to think about doing it a different way, especially if we're talking about meeting these timelines that we're going to have with ARPA, with infrastructure, with all these other dollars. We know that Rec and Parks is chomping at the bit to do design bid for projects, and we expect other agencies to do the same, because they're now being told this is a way that you have to consider. The old way is not the only way that we can build things. And I know Director Mitchell is also excited about that. Sorry about that, Director.
I mean, I guess the point I'm making, Mr. Mayor and Director Mitchell, is we can get excited, but we can do it today, right? There's nothing precluding us from doing it today. I guess, so when we're changing, I just want to kind of, understand, I guess, not just what we're creating, but I guess the parameters of which, when we talk about like a project, for instance, Director Garbuck, what's the definition of a project?
So it lists a number of things that the resolution creates a set of procedures, and that's what's being amended is these procedures, which is under the resolution. The project is any construction project, so one of our construction agencies. So it usually, they give some examples, but it's not completely conclusive of everything that is possible, but the ones it suggests are ones that have a time-bound nature, ones that are particularly complicated with design, ones that would have sort of a limited amount of funding available that needs to be spent. Those types of projects where there is some more logistical issues, some timing issues, some emergent issues where you don't have time to go through the traditional design contract and then construction contract. So those would be the types of contracts that would be looking for, or would be useful for this.
Should the board be concerned that a project could be an aggregate of certain type of work?
So that's a very good question. It could be. I'm not saying it will or won't be, but the resolution does require any design board request, before it's even advertised, come to this body for approval for a notice of letting.
Yeah, but we understand and know that when it comes to this body, it's basically already approved. My concern is the concern around the idea of the one bid process, that one-step process, the potential of aggregation of work, and then, like you just said, bringing it to this body, and then it's basically already done. I think that, when we go down this path, and again, design build is something that we can reverse the tape several times ago when I came on this board. I talked about the importance of it, particularly when we talk about some of our smaller jobs, and particularly when we're talking about some of our local minority women-owned businesses for things like Small Roost. I believe at the time there was a contract where we wanted to move from doing the libraries, and we just basically jumped on a state design build contract from DGS perspective that didn't have any local, that didn't have any minority, that didn't have any women businesses. I don't even think like the businesses are in the Baltimore metropolitan region, but we jumped on that for those reasons because we had severe issues in some of our library roofs that we needed to get fixed very quickly. So really pushed down this idea about agencies to kind of go to this. So I understand and know well the importance of doing this. However, I do think there potentially we're creating unintended consequences if we do not put the construct in place prior to going down this path.
Yes, sir.
The ability of having that one bid, one step approach, the aggregation of work, say the work is building pools. So that means one person that went through on that one step approach gets the 12, 15 new pools that we're building in the city. I don't know that that's moving in the direction that I don't trust that the gravity of which we're going to get this work and get this money and the need for us to complete on time, that if we do not put those type of parameters in place, that we'll be able to kind of steer away from or effectively and efficiently drive the level of equity that we need to see through contracting and procurement. And I say that we haven't seen ever, right? And I think this is a huge opportunity. So
Yes,
that's the only thing I get concerned at, just opening up to the board is the unintended consequences that we might not be thinking about as relates to this is the approach that we should be taking, where should we be going, but how do we set it up in a responsible way so that in 10 years we're not looking back like,
Absolutely.
oh man, I wish we would have did it this way.
And one thing, and I think I may have glossed over it, the proposal has detailed items, 26 different categories. It's extraordinarily detailed. What you're talking about are all in that proposal. It has to have minority and women business considerations before the contract's even developed. It has to have a scope of work justifiable for why that scope is the way it is, some sort of market analysis and reason behind doing it. So that is the proposal that this executive committee would review.
Understood. And let me be clear, when I talk about some of the unintended consequences, it's not just the minority or women businesses, it's also to local businesses. It's also for businesses that aren't local, minority, or women, but just doing it in the most equitable, most effective, and efficient way for the city of Baltimore. I think that, unfortunately, I get concerned when we talk about this way without putting those contracts in place is literally the easiest way of doing this is, contractor A, you get all the pools. And I'm only bringing up pools because that was your example, right? Because it's easy. We can check pools off of our list and we can kind of move on. And I don't know if just doing that at a 30,000 foot level is kind of the best approach at this particular time. Clearly, I'm very supportive of design build. I just want to kind of sit down and kind of think additionally about some of those unintended consequences.
Happy to.
And continue to talk about this. Obviously, this is something that's important. I don't think that it's urgent for us to vote on it today, but would like to continue to talk offline with the administration to ensure that any unintended consequences and things that we can kind of map out prior to then, that we do it the right way, because we get one shot of doing
Yes,
this.
sir.
This is going to be the legacy of this administration. All of us are going to be really important for really shaping and transforming infrastructure in the city of Baltimore, like many administrations in the past have not had the chance to do. And I want my children's children to be happy for the decisions that we make because of it. So with that, are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board? If not, I'm going to ask that we defer this meeting, and we'll reach out to you to kind of sit down and
Okay, no problem.
I'll let my brain think
Got
about
it.
a couple
Okay,
things.
no
Thank you so
problem.
much,
Sure.
Dr. Garber. So with that, we're going to defer, if we can note that this is deferred just one meeting, we'll come back and bring it in front of the board. With that, the next item on the routine agenda can be found on page 167, number 7, Bureau of Procurement. This is in regards to contract number B50006654, online vehicle auctioneer services and Copart Connecticut Incorporated. On behalf of the Bureau of Procurement, we have our amazing Chief Keisha Brown here to present to us. Madam Chief, the floor is yours.
Good morning, President Mosby, honorable members of the board. The Bureau of Procurement is asking that an award for solicitation B5000-6654 online vehicle auction services be awarded to Copart Connecticut Inc. This contract was solicited on CityBuy as well as eMaryland. There were two offers. One was found non-responsive, and Copart was found responsive on September 7, 2020. The MBE's and WBE is 10%.
Does that conclude your presentation?
sir.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chief. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from members of this board? Ms. Comptroller?
Chief Brown and I have had extensive conversations about this item as well, and rather than force the board through a rehash of those conversations, I think I'll simply say my questions at this point are effectively rhetorical, and I will include them in my statement explaining my vote.
I'm gonna have to pinch myself on that, Mr. Comptroller. Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Are there any other questions, concerns from members of the board?
No.
Hearing and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Well,
Or you want to?
So moved.
well,
You want to make a comment
I do
first?
want to make a comment.
Okay, before we go into the motion,
He said he's going.
I know. You go ahead, Mr. Comptroller.
You may or may not remember that sometimes our colleagues up on the fourth floor explain their vote before it's called.
It's in the middle of actually, you asked to explain your vote.
So
Just trying to be technical.
I appreciate that. I asked for this item to be placed on the non-routine agenda because I have concerns about the recommended awardee, Copart, and specifically, and I do want to clarify, I don't have concerns about the selection process that you went through for this contract, for this award, but I have concerns about the recommended awardee and how they obtained their original contract with the city in 2018. As everyone on the board may be aware, Copart was the subject of an Inspector General's report in May of 2020. I have since learned through meetings with procurement that Copart was awarded its original contract with the city in September of 2018 through a non-competitive bidding process. While the contract approved by the BOE was designated as a select source, I also understand that there is no evidence in the Bureau of Procurement's files of any selection process having actually occurred other than Copart just being picked by someone. At the time the contract was approved by the BOE, Copart also does not appear to have had a Baltimore City auctioneer's license, even though the contract required Copart to comply with all state, local, and federal laws, one of which states that, quote, sales shall be conducted through regularly licensed auctioneers of the city of Baltimore, selected by the Department of Finance in accordance with the provisions of the city charter. However, in March of 2019, 6 months later, then Mayor Catherine Pugh issued a letter to Copart's general manager notifying him that she had appointed and licensed Copart as an auctioneer for the city effective the next day. Now, the best case scenario seems to be that the city chose to award a contract to an unqualified vendor and then tried to fix the issue after the fact. The worst case scenario is that the fix was in well beforehand. Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, it is a source of frustration to me why procurement isn't allowed to take this history into consideration when Copart submitted a bid for the current solicitation. I think a company's participation in a questionable previous procurement should be a factor in determining whether they can be a responsible bidder going forward. And I would like, at some point in the future, for either procurement or the law department to lay out what we could do to change that. Would it require changing the code, or could it simply be done by tweaking the city's procurement regulations? Unfortunately, the city has a history of trouble with vehicle auction contracts that predates Copart's 2018 deal by many years. And as a watchdog for city resources, I feel it's my obligation to make sure that every contract is awarded fairly and with a full regard for a vendor's history. But until procurement and the board can take a contractor's history into account, it's likely we will continue to have future problems. And for these reasons, I will be voting no on this agenda, on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Are there any additional questions, concerns from members of the board? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second. It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
I believe we have 2 nays, so it passes 3-2. Please mark the comptroller and myself down as a nay for this particular item. It passes. It's approved. As there's no new business before the desk, and the board will adjourn until bid opening at noon. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Estimates will occur on Wednesday, November the 16th at 9 a.m. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Baltimore, please stay safe, and we absolutely love you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Charm TV. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Estimates bid opening for November 2nd, 2022. I am Celeste Amato. I'm the clerk of the Board of Estimates, and I am joined by my colleagues Sherelle Holly, James Knighton, and Jalen Sanders, who are going to be helping us open bids today and verify bid amounts received. And it is freezing in the Board of Estimates room, so that's why some of us are bundled up. And welcome to our one live audience attendee and all the folks who are tuning in. First, I want to share addenda received on a few bid solicitations that are out there. First up, General Services, contract number GS19825R. Market Center garage renovation. The due date was today, but that date has been adjusted to December 7th, 2022. Recreation and Parks, RP 21820, Chick Webb Recreation Center. The due date was 11/2, and that due date has been adjusted to 11/16/2022. Again, Recreation and Parks, RP 21834, Ambrose Kennedy and Patterson Park pool renovations. That due date was 11/2. That new opening bid date will be 12/14/2022. And finally, Public Works, ER 4054, Herring Run Stream Restoration, Western Branch. The due date was 11/2, and that has been adjusted to 12/7/2022. Those adjustments will be posted on the Comptroller's website later today, along with these bid results. We are opening 4 bids today, and the first bid up, I believe, is procurement, Jim?
Yes.
Contract number RFQ 000082, snow removal services.
Okay.
And go ahead.
All right. The first bid submission is from Best Serve Incorporated, BEST-SERV
Yep.
Incorporated. No bid amount provided.
Okay.
Next submission is from Yatsar Dynasty LLC. That's YATSAR Dynasty LLC. No bid price submitted.
Confirm.
The next submission is from Harford Tree Experts and Landscaping Incorporated. No bid price submitted.
Okay.
And all of those only had originals?
All originals, no copies?
Yes.
Okay.
Next submission is P2 Cleaning Services LLC. That's letter P, number 2. Cleaning Services LLC. No bid price submitted.
Confirm, 2 copies.
Original plus 2?
Yep.
Okay.
And P2 appears to be just an original.
Oh, I'm sorry. Which one was the original 2 copies?
The one you were just doing. He had the original.
I need to know the name. What was the name?
Oh, it was P2 Maintenance Services.
Before P2.
Oh, before P2, it was... Hartford Tree Experts and Landscaping, Inc.
That was the original plus 2 copies. Okay. And P2 cleaning was just an original, no copies.
No. Hartford Tree was the original, no copies. P2 Maintenance Services was the original plus 2 copies.
Okay. For folks watching, we just track the originals and number of copies we received. It's not particularly important except to us because we try to track exactly what we received. Sorry about that. Thanks. Go ahead, Jim.
Next submission is Four Seasons Nursery and Landscape Services Incorporated. No bid price submitted. This seems to be just an original. Just
Thank you.
Confirm.
Next up.
Next up is A. Halcon, letter A, Halcon Contractors, DBA Smart Traffic Services. No bid price submitted. This is just an original.
You have an original and 2 copies? 2 copies?
Of Smart Traffic.
Yes.
Okay.
Next submission is ASB2, number 2, Enterprises, Inc. No bid price submitted.
Thank you. It's an original and 2 copies?
Thanks.
Next submission is Manuel Landscaping, Inc., MANUEL Landscaping, Incorporated. No bid price submitted.
Okay, so then just 1 original?
Okay. Thank you.
Next submission is LG Construction, Inc. LG Construction, Inc. No bid price submitted. Next submission is Powell's Powell's Trucking Company Incorporated. Powell's Trucking Company Incorporated. No bid price submitted. Next submission.
No copies.
Next submission is from Lorenz, Inc., Lorenz, Inc. No bid price submitted.
An original plus 1 copy?
For Lorenz.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next submission is Corporate Maintenance Group, LLC. No bid price submitted.
1 original, no copies?
Thank you. And any others?
Yeah, right, 2 more. Next submission is Carroll Concrete.
Carol with 2 R's and 2 L's?
Yes.
Okay, I don't have these recorded. Carol Concrete and the address, please.
Yeah. 5202 Baltimore National Pike, Suite 201, Catonsville, Maryland, 21229. No bid price submitted.
Okay.
They are Waynetta.
And it was Carroll Concrete, correct? Or Carroll Construction?
Carroll Concrete Construction Company.
Carroll.
Yes, and it is. This is signed Waynetta Mitchell, Waynetta Mitchell, DBA Carroll Concrete Construction Company.
DBA Waynetta?
Uh-huh.
Could you spell that for me, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Waynetta is the first name, Mitchell, Mitchell, DBA, doing business as Carroll Concrete Construction Company.
Okay. And did we receive an original and any copies?
Looks like just the original.
Okay.
Confirms just the original.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, next one is AB Trucking and Contracting, LLC. No bid price submitted. One original.
Do we have their address, please?
It is 4708 Silver Spring Road, Baltimore, MD, 21128.
And original?
Just an original.
Okay. Is that it?
That completes the submissions for this solicitation.
I'm going to read through this list for folks that are trying to keep track of what's going on. None of these proposals were accompanied by totals, so we can't share any pricing, but we will run through the list of those who have submitted bids, and they are as follows: Manuel Landscaping, Inc., ASB2 Enterprises, Inc., Four Seasons Nursery and Landscape Services, P2 Cleaning Services, LLC, Harford Tree Expert and Landscaping, Inc., A. Halson Contractors, doing business as Smart Traffic Services, Yatsar Dynasty, LLC, Best Serve, Inc., Corporate Maintenance Group, LLC, LG Construction, Inc., Lorenz, Inc., Powell's Trucking Company, Inc., Carroll Concrete Construction, also doing business as Waynetta Mitchell, and AB Trucking and Contracting, LLC.
Yes. And just for the record, looking at the solicitation number, this is an RFQ, so it's a request for qualifications,
Okay.
which is why there are no prices in it. So that
Thanks,
explains
Jim.
it.
I will note that on the summary also, so folks aren't confused when they see this. We don't always know that when we are given bids to open for the audience. We sometimes figure that out as we're opening based on the way the bids are coming in the envelopes. So that was a list of bidders who've offered their qualifications for this work.
Yes.
Thanks. If we're ready, next up is a bid for the Department of Public Works. It's contract number WC1400, pavement resurfacing at various locations.
First bid submission is P. Flanagan and Sons, Incorporated. Total bid price, $5,331,950.
That seems like it would have a bid bond with it.
It does.
I thought so. And do we have more than an original?
Yes.
One copy.
Okay. I'm going to read that number back, and Jalen's going to double check my typing skills. That was P. Flanagan and Sons, and the number I have is 5,331,950.00.
Yes, confirm.
So that was P. Flanagan and Sons, $5,331,950.
Yes. Next submission is from LF Mahoney Incorporated. LF Mahoney Incorporated. $4,813,950.
And do we have a bond?
Yes.
And do we have more than original?
It's one copy.
Okay. So the number I've recorded is 4,813,950.00.
Yes.
Yes.
That was LF Mahoney, Inc., $4,813,950.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next submission is from the American Asphalt Paving Company, LLC. The American Asphalt Paving Company, LLC. Total bid price, $5,109,845.
Bid bond?
Yes.
And do we have more than an original?
Yes, one copy.
Okay, that number's 5,109,845.00.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that was American Asphalt Paving Company, LLC, $5,109,845.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next submission is from Manuel Luis Construction Company, Inc. Manuel Luis Construction Company, Inc. Total bid price, $3,909,847.50.
Okay, that number was 3,909,847.50.
Yes.
And we have a bid bond?
Yes.
One original, one duplicate.
Thanks. That was Manuel Luis Construction, let me get this. Manuel Luis Construction Company, Inc., and the number was $3,909,847.50.
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
That completes the submissions for this solicitation.
Your other two. Okay. We are moving on to the third opening, Department of Recreation and Parks, RP 21808. Yep. This is for the Walter P. Carter Pool and Bathhouse. There's no need to throw things, Cheryl.
I didn't do it on purpose, I promise.
Okay, we have only one submission for this solicitation. The bidder is Broughton Construction Company, LLC, BROUGHTON Construction Company, LLC. And bid bond is included. Just gotta find their price. Total bid price, $3,034,823.
That number was 3,034,823.00.
Yes.
That was Broughton Construction, $3,034,823.
Yes.
We have one original and one copy.
Great, thank you. And that was our only bid for RP 21808.
Yes.
And our final opening for today is Department of Transportation TR 22014. This is an urgent need contract. citywide. Urgent need for what? I think we're about to find out. Did that have a bigger name than that, or was it literally just urgent need?
That was pretty much.
It's just an urgent need, folks. I think it has something to do with traffic, or transportation. So first up?
First submission is from Paneguas Enterprises Incorporated. Paneguas Enterprises Incorporated. Total bid price, $2,048,561.
That number was 2,048,561.00.
Yes.
That sounds like it's in the bond range, yeah?
Yes. And the bid bond is included.
Great. And do we have more than one original?
Yes, one original, one copy.
Can I confirm the spelling of Paneguas?
Panegas is P-A-N-I-A-G-U-A-S.
Okay. Apologies if we are mispronouncing that in any way. That was a new one for me. Okay.
Next submission is from P. Flanagan and Sons Incorporated. Total bid price, $1,581,110.
Bid bond?
Yes.
So that number was 1,581,110.00?
Yes.
That was P. Flanagan and Sons, $1,581,110.
Yes.
We have one original and one copy.
Does it seriously just say urgent need contract
Yes.
and no other title?
Citywide.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. It'll be a surprise for us all. Okay, final bidder, I think?
Yep. Final submission is from Manuel Luis Construction Company, Inc. Total bid price, $1,472,140.98.
And 98 cents. There is a bid bond,
Yes.
and we have an original and one copy, it looks like.
Yes.
Okay, that number is 1,472,140.98.
Yes.
And this was for M. Luis Construction, Inc., $1,472,140.98. And I believe that was our last bid for today.
That concludes our bid submissions for today.
Thank you to the team, as always, for organizing this opening. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. That is our final opening for today, and we will see you on November 16th, same time, same channel. Thanks.